Hey everyone, it's 10 Types, and today I'm going to be talking about the Glory of Team Rocket set slash Destined Rivals, Team Rocket's Pokemon cards from Destined Rivals, and I was looking through the card design, and I think the set's pretty cool, Destined Rivals as a whole, and this half the Japanese set. And so there's some really fun cards. Our Believe It EX is cool. A lot of the Team Rockets cards are really fun. I really like the Crobat. But then there are a few cards that I thought might be a little problematic to the game. As we hop into it, they're problematic potentially for some different reasons. I don't think all of them are that big of a deal. I'll get into it specifically, but I think there are some cards that could be potentially really bad for the game and make the game really unfun. But before we hop into things, I'd really appreciate if you subscribe and like the video. That actually really helps me out a lot. But let's just hop right in. And the first card here is Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX or Rocket's Mewtwo EX. All these cards are Team Rocket's cards. They're not all Pokemon though, so the trainers actually don't really interact with the Team Rocket stuff. But Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX, I don't think will be an issue. And if it is, I think it won't. This won't be the only card. But the reason that I think this could be a bit of an issue, and when I say an issue, well, I'll explain in just a moment. But it has really high HP for a basic Pokemon, like really high. It's 280, and has an okay attack. But we haven't seen a basic Pokemon with this HP in quite a while. Not in like what I describe as modern standard. So the reason this is so good is it's like it's a mediocre Pokemon. It actually can't really attack very well because of its ability. But if you slap a Bravery Charm, that's 330, which is tied for the high, or it's not tied for that. It's like really high. It's almost the highest. You could slap a hero escape on it, and it's like you can't really knock it out. It's very, very difficult. It is weak to Charizard DX, which is like kind of annoying, but Charizard doesn't even play that much now. But then you could just penny it up and loop it over and over again. You can't really do this forever, but you can do it a bunch, and it's really annoying. You can also do it with Turbo Scenario. Turbo Scenario discards attached cards, including like a tool. But I think this could end up being theoretically a problem. I don't think it'll be an issue, but the one thing that could be an issue is if, if the HP keeps getting higher, then that's a problem. And we're going to see three prize, presumably three prize basic Mega EXs with the Megas. I don't think we know the names of the sets, but we're going to see some Pokemon with really high HP that are presumably basics. So Pokemon with absurd HP obviously can get a problem because if they're never getting knocked out, then the game just doesn't work, right? So I don't think this will necessarily be an issue with Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX. But we've seen Bloodmere Saluna EX be penny looped some within control. This has more HP than it. Obviously, it's not an attacker, and Bloodmere Saluna EX is really mostly good for its attack. Its HP is nice, but its attack slash ability combined together makes it really, in my opinion, pretty insanely strong. But Team Rocket's Mewtwo EX, we'll see. I don't necessarily think this could be a problem. I think it could be. I don't think it will be. Tell me down below in the comments on this one and all of them, actually, all four of them. But this is probably the one I'm least worried about. But I figured I'd include it just because it could theoretically be an issue. The next card, this is the one I'm most worried about. This is the Team Rocket's Arbok, and this is one that I've heard people talk about a bunch. I mean, I've heard people talk about like all the cards because it's really good. But this card has its ability. Its translate here is Intimidating Glare. As long as it's in the active, your opponent can't play any Pokemon with abilities from their hand except for Team Rocket's Pokemon. Though I don't think that exception will matter very much, but. It also has an attack here for 3 darkness. Spinning Tail does 30 to each your opponent's Pokemon and doesn't apply weakness or resistance to the bench. And of course, there are things that could stop this theoretically. And then you can pay this easier using the Team Rocket's energy, which will pay 2 of the darkness energies. And it's payable. The attack's not super good, but I do think if this card sees play, which I think it will. A lot of people are talking about it in terms of a hit and run card. I don't think it'll be a hit and run card because I think that's a little too inconsistent. Maybe like partially hit and run, but I think you will be using Spinning Tail within the deck just because we've seen hit and run decks before, and they've not been good for a very long time. The only one that's like good now, and that's been good in like recent Pokemon TCG history that I can think of is Feraligatr, which isn't really a hit and run deck. It has some hit and run aspects, but you're not consistently using hit and run. You are doing other things, so you could make it more hit and run focus and streamline it more towards that, get that to work a little bit better. But as a hit and run deck, it's it doesn't really do that, right? It does trapping and big damage, and it can do some hit and run stuff, but it's not really that. Doing this every turn is hard to do. It's not impossible by any means. You can get the switches through various means, but it's still definitely kind of awkward. However, that's not really the big deal here. The big deal is the ability. This ability stops, like, so if we look at the metagame, we will see that almost every good Pokemon in the game has an ability, like the final evolutions, the Pokemon you're actually attacking with and using. There are a few that don't. Dragapult EX doesn't, and Dragapult EX can do what it wants on its own, so that is possible for that to work out. Um, and then I don't know, like Raging Bolt and Trapjaw don't have abilities. There are some Pokemon without abilities, but most of them kind of rely on Pokemon with abilities. Maybe Hampsashi X kind of works, but a lot of decks just won't work at all. And so this deck just stops your opponent from playing their cards. Yes, you could Gust around it, or you could. Well, I was gonna say you could use Iron Bundle. You can't use Iron Bundle because you can't play it, but you can use various forms of Gust. So you could get around it, but I think it's really, really hard. And this card might just completely shut down like half the decks in the game. It's kind of useless. It's not like useless against Dragapult, but it's not super good because they can get the Dragapult up, and then you're not really attacking. Even if you do have some hit and run Pokemon, it's not dealing with Dragapult, right? So I think this could be really problematic if it's good. I think it could ruin the game. I'm going to be completely honest because almost all the interesting Pokemon in the game have abilities. That's what makes them interesting. And there are also Pokemon like Charizard DX is the first one that came to my mind. Its ability is like pretty good, but it's good because of its ability, but also its attack and its HP and like all that stuff. So now you can't use any of that. You can't use like it doesn't turn off the ability. No, it stops you from playing altogether. A Pokemon like I'm trying to think of one that has an ability that doesn't really use the ability. Maybe like Charmeleon is a Pokemon like that. That's not a great example because obviously it's there just as a previous evolution. Its ability does matter, but there are a handful of Pokemon that you can't play. Like Gholdengo EX, right? Gholdengo EX's ability isn't super good. It's decent, it's fine, but it's not the reason that it's good. It's good because of its high damage and its attack, but you can't play it. You just can't play it at all. I think Team Rocket's Arbok could be really, really problematic if it's good. If it's not good, because it might end up being like not super strong or not good because it's not strong enough. But if it's good, then I think it will end up being an actual problem for the game. Kind of like something like Badoo, which we see right now, except like Badoo, you can't play items, but eventually that'll end. The Team Rocket Arbok, it's not going to end, right? They're not going to say like, oh, well, let me not have Team Rocket Arbok in the active so I can do more damage. Like, no, they'll just leave it in the active the whole time because you can't do anything. Item lock is pretty annoying and can seriously shut you down and can theoretically stop you from doing your game plan if you like play only rare candy stage 2s with no stage 1s, but like, that's not super common. More likely it'll just slow them down a lot, but Team Rocket Arbok can completely stop them from doing anything. And I don't think this card's super fun for the game either. I think the Pokemon that's removing, there aren't specific ones that like desperately need this as a counter to help the health of the metagame. I don't think so. I think the metagame's fine. And certain Pokemon that can be complained about, like maybe Dusknoir. This isn't really counter to Dusknoir, but it kind of sort of is. And people don't like that. But there's another card that's counter to Dusknoir, which I think is better. I think it's a hard counter to Dusknoir. It's kind of weird, but regardless, Team Rocket Charbok is kind of absurd. Then the next card we have here is what's it? Team Rockets. Yeah, Team Rockets Watchtower is the translation. It says colorless Pokemon in play have no abilities. Oh, I shouldn't have closed the deck list. Here it is. So this stops notably Knocked Owl, also Pidgeot EX. Pidgeot EX I think is a little underrated right now, and then it's still good and played. But then also to Dunsparce, I talked about this on the podcast, and I forgot to mention the Dunsparce, but that is another card that this counters. I don't think it's super strong, but it's certainly played. And so you can be shutting down like all these engines, like when I say all these engines, essentially not every engine in the game, but almost every engine in the game. You're stopping with the stadium. We saw Path of the Peak. I don't think Path of the Peak was good for the game personally. It really it shut down a lot, most of the good abilities in the game, and narrowed the metagame some. And it didn't really like stop two prizers. For example, Genesect V was an insanely powerful ability, or Lugia V Star, and these are generally regarded as probably a little too strong, especially at the time of their peaks. Genesect V was good for a really long time, like its entire time, but Lugia was good probably the entire time. Was in standard, kind of broken at one point. And Path didn't really slow these decks down that much. In fact, Mew VMAX, which played Genesect V was honestly, yeah, it's probably one of the best cards ever. and it played Path in the deck. So Team Rocket's Watchtower, I don't really know if it's going to help the metagame, and I don't think it really need to remove these Pokemon from the metagame either. I think the current situation with engines is kind of underwhelming. We're seeing decks like, for example, Gardevoir EX, right? That's a very easy example to look at. Gardevoir EX had Curlia, which was a drawn gym, but that rotated, and so now it's kind of like struggling. And I think the game's a little less fun in my opinion because decks are less consistent in the mid game, and you might have times you just kind of stall out. And yes, it can add different elements of skill, and that's cool. But ultimately, Pokemon's fun when you do stuff, right? And this like stops doing stuff, and it's not like, oh, it stops doing stuff and opens up all these other options. It kind of sort of opens up other options like Enzark EX or something like that. But these options aren't super interesting, and it's shutting down a lot of cool ones. Pidgeot EX I think is kind of cool, though can be kind of annoying and boring. But Noctowl, I think I've heard only positive things about it, or maybe neutral. But yeah, I mentioned actually if there are people who are like, yeah, like this shutting down Noctowl, this is something I really want in the game, then maybe that is something that people are looking for. But I haven't really heard that. And then shutting down to Dunsparce, I've not heard anyone say that. I'm sure people will be kind of sad about that, and there might be some other abilities that I'm forgetting about there as like Hop Snorlax. Um, I'm sure there's a number that are like moderately interesting. Ditto as well, shutting that down. Ditto's like cool. I don't love its card design, but it's fine. Fan Rotom as well, similar vein there. And so it does substantially hurt the Knockdown engine. This might be mostly counter to that, but it's pretty annoying. Also doesn't have any synergy with the Team Rocket stuff, which is okay. I mean, there's the other stadium that's also Team Rocket Stadium that has a lot of synergy there, but still it's like a random disruptive card. And again, these cards are all Team Rocket's cards. They don't really interact with Team Rocket stuff that much, though. Last card, though, is Team Rocket's Venture Bomb, or Surprise Bomb is how it's translated here. This card, I don't know if it'll be problematic, but I haven't heard other people say that it could be, but I think it could be. It says on a coin flip, if heads, you put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, if tails, put 2 on one of yours, or no, on your active, sorry. This can be used with Monkey Doria. I didn't even consider that when I first saw it, which is like a kind of obvious synergy, and that's really good for it. It's like pretty good. It makes Monkey Doria a little bit better. Monkey Doria is pretty good right now, but I think could use a little extra oomph, and this could be part of that. But and I know a lot of people think Monkey Doria is like really good. I mean, I think it's pretty good certainly. But anyways, this helps out. But I think the bigger issue is because I don't think this card's super broken. In terms of like power level, but you can play a turn one going first, and it does damage, right? There's a reason you can't attack turn one going first because you don't want people taking knockouts. We've already seen some issues with Pekka plus Brute Bonnet, plus potentially Dangerous Jungle, I believe is the name of this team, to do extra damage. Poison damage counters turn one. This adds extra damage to that. You can also use Iron Valiant EX, and we saw that be an issue when expanded, though it's certainly not fun to take. Like turn one knockouts just aren't really cool. They're kind of cool once, right? They're definitely kind of fun to see like once or twice, but they're never fun to play against, really, especially if your opponent wins turn one. And there's some counterplay, but there's not that much counterplay. And some of that counterplay involves making the game less fun. Again, I don't think this card's super strong, but it is turn one damage. It's on an item that's kind of insane. If you just view this, because half the time it puts one damage counter, or no, half the time it puts 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon, so it's 1 on average. So if you view it as that, then you can play. If you can find 2 consistently, so that's 20 probably on average. So you can probably dig to find more though, and if you really commit to this, you can probably just go for knockouts turn one pretty consistently. Again, this isn't like super strong, like competitive level decks, but on like the ladder, you might just see this all the time. I don't know, the ladder's a little weird as well, but overall, this is a card that I'm not a big fan of the design of. I think it's kind of funny. It's also a coin flip, and if it's frustrating, I think coin flips are okay in the game. I've been critical of them some in Pocket, but I think they're fine in the TCG, except for when they're on cards that are frustrating, like Crushing Hammer, and this might fall into that category. I don't think this one again is ruining the game. I think it's more so. I think the Arbok could be really bad for it, and I'm not a big fan of the Team Rocket's Watchtower design. I think it's good and not fun. But tell me what you think of these cards down below. If you think any of these are gonna just like ruin the game, or if the game really needs them and these are gonna like save the game. But overall, I mean, I like the current metagame, but and stuff tossing it up is always nice. And again, the set is really cool, but I think some of these cards could be a little problematic. But I hope you enjoyed. Consider liking, subscribing, hitting the bell, all the good stuff. Of course, comment down below your thoughts on this. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video.